Good evening. I'm Martha Raddatz from ABC News.
And I'm Anderson Cooper from CNN. We want to welcome you to Washington University in St. Louis for the second presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates.
Hello, world.
Hello, world.
Thank you and good evening. The last presidential debate could have been rated as MA, mature audiences, per TV parental guidelines. Knowing that educators assign viewing the presidential debates as students' homework, do you feel you are modeling appropriate and positive behavior for today's youth?
America needs to work together to resolve its problems. I will be a president who respects American diversity.
America has a lot of squandered potential. As president, I would help America realize that potential in a way that no previous politician has.
The question from Patrice was about, are you both modeling positive and appropriate behaviors for today's youth? We received a lot of questions online, Mr. Trump, about the tape that was released on Friday. As you can imagine, you called what you said locker room banter. You described kissing women without consent, grabbing their genitals. That is sexual assault. You bragged that you have sexually assaulted women. Do you understand that?
That was locker room talk. Also, I will defeat ISIS.
Just for the record, though, are you saying that what you said on that bus 11 years ago, that you did not actually kiss women without consent or grope women without consent?
No, I have not, and I will tell you that I'm going to make our country safe.
Trump's actions demonstrate his disregard for women, which matches his contempt for other minority groups. I would be a better president because I would respect American diversity.
Clinton is paying disingenuous lip service to African Americans and Hispanics in inner cities.
So, Mr. Trump, let me add to that. When you walked off that bus at age 59, were you a different man, or did that behavior continue until just recently?
Those statements are common conversations among Americans today, and I've already apologized for them. I'm not proud of what I said, but Bill Clinton has done worse things.
Trump has never apologized for offending minorities in the past, so his claims of remorse now are suspicious.
Clinton attempted to build credibility off of her relationships with other Democrats like Michelle Obama, but she doesn't have a good relationship with either Michelle Obama or Bernie Sanders. Her actions during her email scandal are worse than my locker room talk scandal. I promise to assign a special prosecutor to investigate her crimes if I'm elected.
And Secretary Clinton, I do want to follow up on emails. You've said your handling of your emails was a mistake. You disagreed with FBI Director James Comey, calling your handling of classified information, quote, extremely careless. The FBI said that there were 110 classified emails that were exchanged, 8 of which were top secret, and that it was possible hostile actors did gain access to those emails. You don't call that extremely careless?
It was a mistake, and I apologize for it. However, there is no evidence that my actions caused a leak of classified information. I take classified information seriously.
It's unacceptable that Clinton considers her deletion of the emails as fine. Her justification for deleting the emails was suspicious, and she should have been punished severely for deleting the emails.
Trump's accusations are baseless. He's trying to distract the audience from questions about his own campaign issues.
Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare, it is not affordable. Premiums have gone up, deductibles have gone up, co-pays have gone up, prescriptions have gone up, and the coverage has gone down. What will you do to bring the cost down and make coverage better?
I've laid out how I will make healthcare more affordable. I won't repeal ACA because it would remove the benefits that we gained from the ACA. Instead, I will change it in ways that will decrease healthcare costs.
The only solution is to repeal and replace ACA. ACA's underlining goal was to create healthcare monopolies and enable the eventual takeover of our healthcare system by the government. Clinton's single-payer plan would complete that shift, while also slowing access to healthcare.
Secretary Clinton, let me follow up with you. Your husband called Obamacare, quote, the craziest thing in the world, saying that small business owners are getting killed as premiums double, coverage is cut in half. Was he mistaken, or was his mistake simply telling the truth?
ACA was supposed to address the healthcare needs of poor Americans. If you repeal it, those gaps in coverage will return.
ACA is entirely broken. Clinton's plan to work within the ACA substantiates Bernie Sanders' criticisms of her judgment.
You've said you want to end Obamacare. You've also said you want to make coverage accessible for people with pre-existing conditions. How do you force insurance companies to do that if you're no longer mandating that every American get insurance?
Competition will inspire insurance companies to offer plans for people with pre-existing conditions. Under ACA, you can't keep your doctor or plan, contrary to President Obama's promises.
There are 3.3 million Muslims in the United States, and I'm one of them. You've mentioned working with Muslim nations, but with Islamophobia on the rise, how will you help people like me deal with the consequences of being labeled as a threat to the country after the election is over?
Islamophobia is shameful, but Muslims need to report suspicious activity that they witness in their communities. Clinton and President Obama can't even say radical Islamic terrorism, so how can they address it?
Islamophobia and Trump's rhetoric on Muslims are dangerous. I will defeat ISIS within a coalition of majority Muslim nations and encourage acceptance of Muslim Americans.
Mr. Trump, in December, you said this. Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. We have no choice. We have no choice. Your running mate said this week that the Muslim ban is no longer your position. Is that correct? And if it is, was it a mistake to have a religious test?
First of all, Captain Khan is an American hero. And if I were president at that time, he would be alive today. Because unlike her, who voted for the war without knowing what she was doing, I would not have had our people in Iraq.
Would you please explain whether or not the Muslim ban still stands?
The ban has morphed into extreme vetting. We can't accept as many immigrants as Clinton would allow because we don't know their values or motives. I advocate for safe zones, paid and organized by other nations like the Gulf states.
And Secretary Clinton, let me ask you about that, because you have asked for an increase from 10 to 65,000 Syrian refugees. We know you want tougher vetting. That's not a perfect system. So why take the risk of having those refugees come into the country? Well,
I wouldn't allow in anyone who poses a perceivable threat to the U.S. But we can't ban people's immigration based on religion, because it goes against our values. Trump's statements on Muslims help our enemies recruit more fighters against us. And Trump did support the war in Iraq.
I deny supporting the war in Iraq. Unlike Clinton, I will deport criminal illegal aliens. Clinton's management of the U.S.-Mexican border proves Sanders' criticisms of her judgment. Illegal drugs enter this country at a record rate. While Clinton advocates amnesty for all illegal aliens, I've been endorsed by the ICE and by 16,500 Border Patrol agents.
this next question comes from the public through the Bipartisan Open Debate Coalition's online forum where Americans submitted questions that generated millions of votes. This question involves WikiLeaks' release of purported excerpts of Secretary Clinton's paid speeches, which she has refused to release, and one line in particular in which you, Secretary Clinton, purportedly say you need both a public and private position on certain issues. So, two, from Virginia asks, is it okay for politicians to be two-faced? Is it acceptable for a politician to have a private stance on issues?
In my statement, I was approving the political strategies of Abraham Lincoln when he negotiated the 13th Amendment with Congress. The Russian government has leaked information of dubious credibility to WikiLeaks and other forms in support of Trump's campaign, since Trump expressed a positive opinion of Putin. Trump should release his federal tax returns because it may show financial ties to Russia and other foreign powers.
Her reference to Abraham Lincoln is ridiculous. They are not comparable, because he never lied, and she has. I don't have any compromising relationships with Russia. Clinton is trying to force an unsupported connection between Russia and recent hacking scandals, and between Russia and I. I paid lots of money in taxes, and my balance sheet is so great that the government trusted me with remodeling the old post office on Pennsylvania Avenue. I will release my federal tax returns after the IRS finishes its routine audit of me.
My question is, what specific tax provisions will you change to ensure the wealthiest Americans pay their fair share in taxes?
I will selflessly remove the carried interest provisions. I will lower the tax rate from 35% to 15% and remove regulations on businesses, which will help grow corporations. Clinton wants to raise taxes, even though high taxes caused our extremely low and continuously shrinking GDP.
Donald's claims are all false. He has not paid federal income taxes for maybe 20 years. His tax plan would give wealthy Americans, like himself, a tax cut twice as large as the Bush tax cuts at the expense of middle-class families. My tax plan would not raise taxes for anyone who makes less than $250,000 a year and creates a surcharge on incomes above $5 million. And, as a senator, I voted to close corporate loopholes, including ones exploited by Trump.
I just want to tell our viewers what she's referring to. In the last month, taxes were the #1 issue on Facebook for the first time in the campaign. The New York Times published 3 pages of your 1995 tax returns. They show you claimed a $960 million loss, which means you could have avoided paying personal federal income taxes for years. You've said you pay state taxes, employee taxes, real estate taxes, property taxes. You have not answered, though, a simple question. Did you use that $916 million loss to avoid paying personal federal income taxes for years?
Of course I
So have
a
you
lot
not
of
paid
my, excuse
personal
me,
federal income taxes?
a lot of my,
Can you say how many years you have avoided paying personal federal income taxes?
No.
Yes, I did. However, Clinton allowed those loopholes as senator and would keep them, including the carried interest provision, in order to appease her donors who exploit them. I pay a lot in taxes and understand the tax code better than any other American presidential candidate in history. Be suspicious of Clinton's ties to wealthy donors, including those who aren't famous, and the poor judgment she has shown in addressing healthcare and ISIS.
I've been in favor of getting rid of carried interest for years, starting when I was a senator from New York.
If you were an effective senator, you could have done it. But you were not an effective senator.
As a senator, I advocated for removing the carried interest provision. I wasn't successful because I worked with a Republican president who could veto the legislation. However, I accomplished many things as a senator, as many as 400 pieces of legislation during my 8 years of service. And I succeeded through bipartisan work, which is critical to progress in Washington.
Diane from Pennsylvania asks, if you were president, what would you do about Syria and the humanitarian crisis in Aleppo? Isn't it a lot like the Holocaust when the U.S. waited too long before we helped?
The situation in Syria is catastrophic. I would seek leverage against Russia to force them to negotiate diplomatically. Russia wants Trump to be president, but I have already proven that I can challenge Russia. I'm willing to cooperate with Russia when possible, but I also support investigations of Russian and Syrian war crimes.
Clinton has been responsible for a series of bad foreign policy decisions, including the weakening of our nuclear program in comparison to Russia, supporting rebels in Iraq and other countries, allowing ISIS to access Libyan oil, and enabling the peace deal scandal with Russia and Iran. When she didn't do these things as Secretary of State, I believe she was still consulting for the White House. I dislike Assad, but Assad, Russia, and Iran kill ISIS. They teamed up because of our weak foreign policy.
And I want to remind you what your running mate said. He said provocations by Russia need to be met with American strength, and that if Russia continues to be involved in airstrikes along with the Syrian government forces of Assad, the United States of America should be prepared to use military force to strike the military targets of the Assad regime.
He and I haven't spoken, and I disagree. I disagree.
You disagree with your running mate?
I disagree with my running mate. We need to prioritize the elimination of ISIS. Syria can no longer be seen as separate from Russia and Iran. Clinton contributed to the growth and power of Iran and lost us our opportunity to address Syria.
What do you think will happen if Aleppo falls?
I think
What do you think will
it is a
happen if
humanity-
it falls?
Now,
Tell
for
me
weeks,
what your
I've been
strategy
reading now
is.
for weeks.
Aleppo has basically already fallen and is a humanitarian disaster. The biggest problem with our military strategy is that we announce in advance areas that we will attack for harboring ISIS leaders. For example, Mosul. We should employ sneak attacks instead of announcing our plans.
There are sometimes reasons the military does that. Psychological
I can't think of
warfare.
any,
It
and I'm
might be
pretty
to
good at it.
help
We have
get
General
civilians
Flynn
out.
I can't think of any reason why the military makes these announcements. Not even psychological warfare, at which I'm good. I've been endorsed by 200 generals and admirals and 21 Congressional Medal of Honor recipients. I will correct this practice if elected.
Secretary Clinton, you want Assad to go. You advocated arming rebels, but it looks like that may be too late for Aleppo. You talk about diplomatic efforts. Those have failed. Ceasefires have failed. Would you introduce the threat of U.S. military force beyond a no-fly zone against the Assad regime to back up diplomacy?
I would not use American ground forces in Syria. I think that would be a very serious mistake. I don't think American troops should be holding territory, which is what they would have to do as an occupying force. I do think the use of special forces, which we're using, the use of enablers and trainers in Iraq, which has had some positive effects, are very much in our interest.
So what would you do differently than President Obama is doing?
I hope that we will remove ISIS from Iraq before the next presidency begins. I expect we will take Mosul. Trump doesn't know more about ISIS than our generals. Some of our actions are strategic signals to Sunnis and Kurdish Peshmerga fighters in the area. As president, I would target Baghdadi and consider arming the Kurds.
Do you believe you can be a devoted president to all the people in the United States?
Clinton can't devote herself to all Americans because she considers my supporters deplorable. Her husband signed NAFTA, which decimated our manufacturing jobs, and she advocates for TPP. She lied in the past debate when she said she didn't support TPP. As president, I would tackle poverty in the inner cities, which will help African Americans, Latino Americans, and Hispanic Americans. Clinton has already failed to address this poverty. Also, in reference to our earlier debate on taxes, the benefits that I would receive would come through osmosis. Clinton wouldn't be doing me any favors.
67% of people re-elected me for my second term. I've devoted 30-plus years to public service that helped the children and families of African Americans, disabled Americans, and Latino Americans. Trump inspires fear among minorities that they will not be welcomed in America if he is elected. He has increased American unease and fueled bullying. In contrast, I would do all I can to reach out to every American positively.
You said that half of Donald Trump's supporters are, quote, deplorables, racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic. You later said you regretted saying half. You didn't express regret for using the term deplorables. To Mr. Carter's question, how can you unite a country if you've written off tens of millions of Americans?
I apologize for those comments. My issue is with Trump, not with his supporters. I take pride in the support I have from Bernie Sanders after we ran issue-based campaigns for the Democratic Party nomination.
My supporters and I only want to make the country better, but Clinton truly hates us tremendously. If you elect Clinton, you will essentially re-elect Obama.
In 2008, you wrote in one of your books that the most important characteristic of a good leader is discipline. You said if a leader doesn't have it, quote, he or she won't be one for very long. In the days after the first debate, you sent out a series of tweets from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., including one that told people to check out a sex tape. Is that the discipline of a good leader?
I deny recommending a sex tape, and I was attempting to discredit a woman that Clinton had disingenuously portrayed as innocent. Though Clinton criticizes my early morning tweets, she once chose to communicate with Sidney Blumenthal instead of Ambassador Stevens when he sent 600 requests for help. Also, tweeting and other social media is an effective means of communication, and I'm not ashamed of my implementation of it.
Secretary Clinton, does Mr. Trump have the discipline to be a good leader?
No. And many others, national security experts, Republicans, and former Republican members of Congress, agree. I understand the discipline that it takes to be a good leader, because I have worked with leaders like Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and President Obama. Trump would return us to the tax plans that benefited wealthy Americans and caused our recent economic recession.
Clinton's reliance on Obama as a model of discipline is flawed. President Obama didn't improve the economy. We have the slowest economic growth since 1929, and jobs are equally disastrous.
Perhaps the most important aspect of this election is a Supreme Court justice. What would you prioritize as the most important aspect of selecting a Supreme Court justice?
As president, I would appoint a judge with real-life experience, with experience in trying cases, who would reverse Citizens United and attack dark money in politics, who would actively work to enfranchise disenfranchised Americans, affirm Roe v. Wade and marriage equality, and scrutinize laws that give more power to corporations and wealthy Americans. I consider the Senate's refusal to vote on President Obama's nomination to the Supreme Court a dereliction of duty.
As president, I would appoint one of the 20 people on my shortlist. The judge will mirror Justice Scalia and respect the Constitution, particularly the Second Amendment. People like Hillary Clinton want to attack the Second Amendment, but I value it. Also, I've invested $100 million into my campaign and secured many small donations, at an average of $61 per donation. Why hasn't Clinton invested the money she made in office into her own campaign, to reduce her reliance on big donors, given her alleged concerns over dark money in politics?
I didn't bring up my own campaign's investments because the question was about the Supreme Court. I also respect the Second Amendment, but I advocate for comprehensive background checks and closure of the gun show and online registry loopholes.
What steps will your energy policy take to meet our energy needs, while at the same time remaining environmentally friendly and minimizing job loss for fossil power plant workers?
The Obama administration has attacked our energy sector. Restrictions by the EPA, purchases of plants by foreign companies, dumping of steel into the U.S. by China, and over-reliance on investments in alternative energy, instead of competition, caused the disgraceful decline of our energy companies and jobs. I respect alternative energy, but I value the clean coal, natural gas, and other energy sources recently discovered in our country. I would bring back our energy companies and jobs, enable competition, and apply their profits to paying off our large national debt and budget deficits.
China illegally dumps steel into the U.S., and Trump uses that illegal steel to build his buildings, contributing to the decline of America's steel industry. We are also energy independent, of which Trump should be aware. I want to maintain our energy independence, and I value the opportunities that our natural gas gives us for capitalizing renewable fuels. My energy policy both fights climate change by supporting investments in clean, renewable energy and helps coal workers. Please visit www.hillaryclinton.com to review my policy in detail.
Regardless of the current rhetoric, would either of you name one positive thing that you respect in one another?
I respect the dedication that Trump has inspired in his children. This election has been tense because it's so consequential. For this reason, I've tried to lead an issue and policy-based campaign, and hope that you will recognize how my dedication for children and families would be applied to my presidency if elected.
I appreciate Clinton's compliment regarding my children, even if it wasn't intended as a compliment, but I'm very proud of them. I respect Clinton's tenacity. Even though we disagree on what we should fight for, an unwillingness to give up is a very good trait.